The story of the Starlight Princess. The sky has always held secrets. Since the dawn of time, men, women, and children have tilted their heads upward, marveling at the endless black ocean dotted with burning pearls of light. Some saw patterns, constellations that told of hunters, lovers, and gods. Others saw omens, believing the heavens to be a mirror of fate. But long before humankind ever began to carve myths into the stars, there was a story written among them, a story whispered not in words, but in the shimmer of starlight itself. That story is of a princess born not on earth, nor in any palace of stone or gold, but in the heart of the cosmos itself. They called her the Starlight Princess. She was not of flesh and blood, though she carried the warmth of life. Her form was woven of pure celestial light, her hair like a river of silver flowing endlessly, her eyes reflecting galaxies that no mortal could ever see. She was born from the union of two eternal forces, Elarion, the keeper of stars, who guided the dance of constellations, and Selirya, the spirit of dawn, whose soft glow touched every world with the promise of renewal. From them came a daughter destined to guard the fragile balance between darkness and light. Unlike gods who ruled with power or mortals who struggled with fragility, the Starlight Princess was both guardian and dreamer, eternal yet yearning, powerful yet gentle, destined yet uncertain. Her name was whispered among the stars, Liara. When her first cry echoed across the heavens, it was said the firmament itself shivered, and countless stars were born anew. Her laughter scattered comets across the skies, her tears fell as silver rain into the void, birthing nebulae of extraordinary colors. To mortals far below, these were astronomical wonders. To the stars themselves, it was the beginning of her story. But where there is light, there is always shadow. Beyond the reaches of constellations and solar warmth lay the eternal void, a realm untouched by flame or radiance. There dwelled Umbral, the warden of darkness. He was not evil in the way mortals imagine, but he was relentless, desiring stillness, silence, and the end of all flickering sparks. He believed stars burned too brightly, that their brilliance was wasteful, fleeting, and arrogant. When Liara was born, her glow was unlike anything he had ever seen, more radiant than 1,000 suns, yet softer than a candle's flame. To Umbral, she was both a marvel and a threat. The stars rejoiced at her existence, crowning her their princess, the embodiment of hope. The void, however, stirred with unease. Umbral watched from afar, his patience stretched thin as her light began to weave harmony across galaxies. His whispers reached corners of the cosmos, where even her father's light could not touch. "Too bright," he murmured. "Too fragile. What burns so strongly must one day burn out." Liara grew not as mortals do with years and seasons, but with the pulse of the universe itself. Each time a star was born, she grew wiser. Each time one died, collapsing into ash or a black hole, she grew sadder. Her heart carried 1,000 joys and 1,000 griefs. Yet she remained curious, always yearning to see the worlds below. "Father," she once asked Elarion, "do the mortals look at us as we look at them?" Her father, ancient and kind, replied, "They see your light and weave stories from it. To them, you are eternal. But remember, child, eternity is not the same as invincibility." Her mother, Selirya, touched her face with a glow like morning mist. "The mortals dream because of us, Liara. Never forget, dreams are as powerful as any star." And so, Liara began to descend in secret. She would weave her starlight into a soft form that could walk upon the earth without blinding mortals. She visited kingdoms and villages in silence, watching humans laugh, sing, and struggle. She was fascinated by their courage, for though their lives were brief as sparks, they burned with passion as fiercely as any star. She danced in their festivals disguised as a maiden in silver robes, listened to their songs by firelight, and wept quietly when she saw their wars. No one ever knew that the gentle girl with eyes like constellations was the princess of the stars. Yet as she grew closer to mortals, Umbral's envy deepened. He feared that her bond with them would spread her light further, piercing even the deepest shadows of the void. In silence, he began to weave a plan to steal her radiance and plunge the skies into endless night. For in his heart, he believed that only in darkness could the universe find peace. But fate is never simple. Liara was destined to choose between her love for mortals and her duty to the stars. Her journey would test her strength, her compassion, and her very essence. And when the time came, she would have to face the one truth she had always feared, that even starlight can fade. The mortal world was unlike anything Liara had ever imagined from above. The stars sang of its beauty, but their songs could never capture the scent of wildflowers after rain, the rush of river water against smooth stone, or the simple warmth of a child's laughter. When Liara first stepped upon the soil, cloaked in her mortal disguise, she felt a strange trembling in her essence. Her light dimmed just enough to let her walk unseen, but her heart pulsed brighter, as if every blade of grass and every whisper of the wind was teaching her something new. She wandered far, crossing mountains, valleys, and oceans, never staying too long in one place. Yet wherever she walked, mortals noticed her presence. Farmers swore the fields glowed after she passed. Shepherds claimed their sheep grew calmer under her gaze. Musicians who met her said they played better songs, as if inspired by some invisible muse. Though none knew who she was, they remembered her as the silver-robed maiden whose eyes carried the night sky itself. One evening, in the kingdom of Arvlith, Liara found herself drawn to a festival held under a harvest moon. Lanterns floated in the air like tiny stars, and the townsfolk sang songs of gratitude for the season's bounty. Liara wandered among them, marveling at how these brief-lived creatures celebrated life so passionately. She was laughing quietly at the clumsy dance of two children when a voice spoke beside her. "You don't look like you're from here." She turned to see a young man watching her curiously. He was dressed simply, in the garb of a soldier, yet his eyes were keen and filled with warmth. His name, she would later learn, was Kalen. Unlike the others, he was not dazzled by her strange aura. Instead, he studied her with quiet respect, as if he sensed a story hidden behind her gaze. "I wander," Liara replied softly. "I am from far away." "Farther than the mountains?" Kalen asked with a half-smile. "Much farther." Something about his gentle humor stirred warmth in her. They spent the night speaking beneath the lantern-lit sky. Kalen told her of his life, a soldier bound by duty to protect his people, though he longed more for peace than for battle. Liara listened intently, her heart aching at his struggles, for she had seen countless mortal wars from above. Yet hearing his voice, his hopes, and his fears made those struggles more real than they had ever been. As days passed, she remained in Arvlith longer than she had ever stayed in one place. She helped heal the sick with her subtle glow, guided lost travelers with her strange sense of direction, and grew close to Kalen, who began to trust her as though she had always been part of his world. Liara found herself smiling more, her heart stirring with emotions she had never known. For the first time, she wondered, could a being of light truly belong among mortals? But far above, Umbral was watching. From the eternal void, his shadows spread like ink across the edges of the cosmos. He saw Liara's fondness for the mortal soldier, her laughter among villagers, her gentle acts of kindness. To him, it was weakness. Love, he believed, was the quickest way to burn out a flame. "So the princess falls," he whispered. "Let her heart tether itself to mortals. When the moment comes, her light will shatter." And so he sent his first shadow. One moonless night, as Kalen and Liara walked by the river's edge, a cold wind swept through the land. The lanterns that lined the path flickered and died, leaving only the silver shimmer of Liara's eyes. From the darkness rose a figure cloaked in black mist, its form shifting, never whole. Its voice was a hiss carried on the wind. "Child of stars, your light does not belong here." Kalen stepped in front of her, sword drawn, though the blade trembled in his hands. Liara's glow pulsed instinctively, a shield forming around them. She knew this presence, It was not Umbral himself, but a fragment of his will, a shadow sent to test her. "Leave them," she commanded, her voice ringing with starlight. "Mortals are not yours to claim." The shadow laughed, a hollow sound. "Mortals fade in moments. Darkness endures. And so will you, when your heart breaks." With that, it surged forward, striking at Kaelin. Without thinking, Liara raised her hand, and a burst of silver fire erupted from her palm. The shadow shrieked, dissolving into mist, scattering back into the night. Silence returned, broken only by Kaelin's ragged breath. He turned to her, eyes wide with awe and fear. What are you?" he whispered. Liara hesitated. This was the moment she had always avoided, the moment mortals would see her not as a maiden, but as something otherworldly. Slowly, she lowered her hand, her glow dimming. "I am not of this world," she admitted softly. "I am Liara, Princess of the Stars." Kaelin stared at her for a long moment, torn between disbelief and wonder. Then, to her surprise, he sheathed his sword and said, "Star or mortal, you saved me. That's all that matters." Her heart swelled, for no mortal had ever accepted her so simply. Yet in the back of her mind, Umbral's whisper lingered. "When your heart breaks, your light will shatter." Liara's confession to Kaelin lingered in the quiet air between them long after the shadow had vanished. For the first time in her existence, she had revealed her truth to a mortal. She expected fear, distance, perhaps even rejection. Yet Kaelin's acceptance was steady, simple, and unshaken. His words replayed in her heart. "Star or mortal, you saved me. That's all that matters." To Liara, who had always been the guardian of countless lights, it was bewildering to be valued not for what she was, but for what she had done. In the days that followed, her bond with Kaelin deepened. They walked together beneath the night sky, and he would point to constellations, weaving stories his people told of hunters and queens, of beasts and heroes. Sometimes he would pause mid-story, catch her smile, and shake his head as if he knew his tales could never compare to the truth in her eyes. Liara, in turn, shared pieces of her world, how stars were born, how they died, how their songs echoed across eternity. She spoke of beauty he could scarcely imagine, yet Kaelin always listened as if every word was a treasure. But even as joy bloomed, a quiet unease stirred within her. She felt her light pulsing differently when Kaelin was near, warmer and more fragile. Each laugh they shared, each moment of silence held between them, bound her heart closer to his. And with every bond, she remembered her father's warning. Eternity is not invincibility. If Umbral struck again, could she bear the weight of Kaelin's peril? Could she risk tying her eternal flame to a mortal life so brief, so delicate? Far above, Umbral watched with cold satisfaction. Her love, her growing attachment, it was precisely what he had hoped for. Darkness did not need to destroy her outright. It needed only to wound her heart so deeply that her light would fracture. To this end, he called forth his servants from the void. These were not mere shadows but dreadborn, creatures spun from the silence of collapsed stars. They had no form of their own, taking shape from fear itself. To mortals, they appeared as nightmares given flesh. To Liara, they were harbingers of her doom. One night, as Liara and Kaelin stood atop the cliffs overlooking the kingdom, she felt the first tremor of their coming. The stars above flickered uneasily, dimming as though a veil had been cast across them. Her heart quickened. "Something is wrong," she whispered. Before Kaelin could reply, the earth itself seemed to exhale darkness. Figures rose from the shadows, hulking shapes with hollow eyes and claws that dripped with void light. The villagers below screamed, their festival fires extinguished as terror spread like wildfire. The Dreadborn had come. Liara's glow ignited instinctively, silver light flaring around her like armor. She stood before the creatures, her voice resonant, with starlight authority. "Return to the void. You have no place here." But the Dreadborn only hissed, circling her, their voices like broken echoes. Light, fragile light, soon extinguished. Kalen drew his sword, though he trembled at the sight of them. "I'll fight with you," he said firmly. Liara's heart twisted. She wanted to shield him, to command him to flee, but something in his resolve held her back. Mortals were fragile, yes, but they were also unyielding. To deny him his courage would dishonor everything she admired about them. The battle was unlike any Liara had faced before. For every Dreadborn she struck with her radiance, another rose from the shadows. Her glow illuminated the night sky, but each burst left her weaker, her light dimming. Kalen fought at her side, his blade clashing with their shifting forms, though it often passed harmlessly through their void-born bodies. Still, his presence steadied her, gave her strength to endure. At last, she gathered her remaining essence into one great surge. Raising both hands, she unleashed a wave of starlight so brilliant it painted the entire kingdom in silver glow. The Dreadborn shrieked, their forms unraveling, dissolving back into the void from which they had come. Silence returned, broken only by the crackling of rekindled fires. But Liara staggered, her body dimming dangerously. Kalen caught her before she could fall. "You're fading," he said, panic in his voice. "I used too much," she murmured. Her glow was flickering like a candle in a storm. For the first time in her existence, she felt the fear of extinction. Kalen held her close, his mortal warmth grounding her fragile essence. "Rest," he whispered fiercely. "I'll protect you." Something broke inside her then, not her light, but the wall she had always kept around her heart. She realized that despite her fears, despite the risk, she loved him. And that love, fragile as it was, anchored her fading essence. Her glow steadied, dim though it remained. Above, in the unseen reaches of the void, Umbral smiled. "Yes, burn brighter, little star. Burn for him. When the flame is strongest, that is when it shatters best." And so the game continued, Liara caught between love and duty, Kalen bound by loyalty and courage, and Umbral weaving the threads of their downfall with patient, merciless hands. The battle with the Dreadborn left more than scars on the land. It left questions burning in Liara's heart. The villagers whispered about the Silver Maiden who saved them, some praising her as a goddess, others fearing her as an omen. Kalen stood at her side, his loyalty unwavering, but Liara felt the weight of every gaze upon her. She had come to walk among mortals out of love and curiosity, yet now her presence had drawn Umbral's shadows into their world. Could she justify the risk of staying? That night, beneath the trembling stars, she made her choice. She turned to Kalen, her eyes shimmering with sorrow. "I must return home," she said softly. Kalen's brows furrowed. "Home? To the heavens?" She nodded. "My father must know what Umbral plans. I cannot fight this war alone." He looked at her for a long moment, torn between desire and duty. "Then let me go with you." Liara's heart tightened. She wanted nothing more than to bring him into her world, to show him the rivers of light and the eternal gardens of dawn. But mortals were not meant to walk among stars. "You cannot," she whispered. "Your body would burn, your soul unravel. You belong here." Kalen clenched his fists, frustration and pain in his eyes. "Then what am I to do? Wait while you face this alone? You saw those things we both did. They'll come again. What happens if you don't return?" Liara reached for his hand, her glow gentle against his calloused palm. "Then you must be strong for your people. Protect them. Live for them." She paused, her voice softening. "Live for me." It was the closest she had come to confessing her love, and in his silence, she felt the truth of his heart echo back. No vow was spoken, but it was understood. Whatever paths they walked, their destinies were now entwined. When dawn broke, Liara ascended. Her body dissolved into 1,000 points of silver light, rising into the sky until only a faint shimmer remained. Kalen watched until his eyes blurred, his chest aching with both awe and loss. High above, Liara returned to the Court of Stars, where her father, Elarion, awaited in a hall built of constellations. The Keeper of Stars regarded her with solemn eyes. You have lingered long among mortals, my daughter, he said, his voice like thunder wrapped in velvet. Liara bowed her head. I had to understand them, father. Their courage, their love, it is unlike anything in the heavens. Love, he repeated, a shadow crossing his ancient face. A gift, yes, but also a chain. You know this. Her mother, Selirya, stepped forward, her dawnlit presence gentler than the stars. Do not scold her, Elarion. She has faced Umbral's shadows and returned. That is no small feat, she touched Liara's cheek. But tell us, child, what stirs in the void? Liara recounted all she had seen, the shadow at the river, the dreadborn that swarmed Arvlith, and Umbral's lingering threat. He is patient, she said. He does not seek to destroy me with force, but to weaken me with sorrow. He believes my light will shatter if my heart breaks. The court fell silent. Even the stars themselves seemed to dim at her words. Elarion's voice hardened. Then you must sever what binds you. Cut away the mortal thread before Umbral strangles you with it. Liara's breath caught. You mean abandon him? It is not cruelty, but mercy, her father insisted. Mortals are brief flames. Their love is fleeting, their lives fragile. You are eternal. You cannot bind yourself to what cannot last. But Selirya shook her head. Perhaps it is not so simple. The mortal's flames may be brief, but in their brevity lies beauty. Umbral fears not your love, but the strength it may yet give you. Perhaps, Liara, it is your heart, not your power, that will prove his undoing. Liara stood torn between her parents' counsel. She thought of Kaelin's hand in hers, of his vow to fight by her side even against nightmares. She thought of the warmth she felt when his eyes met hers, a warmth stronger than any star. Could she truly let that go? Or was clinging to him the very weakness Umbral desired? Meanwhile, back on Earth, Kaelin wrestled with his own choices. The kingdom hailed him as a hero, though he knew the true savior was Liara. He trained harder, his sword arm growing strong, his resolve sharper. If darkness came again, he vowed he would not stand helpless. Yet in his quiet moments, he found himself gazing upward, searching the skies for her light, whispering her name into the wind. One night, as he stood alone beneath the stars, a strange figure appeared at the edge of the forest. Cloaked in shadows, yet not hostile, the figure spoke with a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. You seek her, don't you? The Maiden of the Stars. Kaelin's hand went to his sword. Who are you? An echo, the figure said. A fragment of truth. If you would walk beside her, mortal, you must be willing to give more than your strength. You must be willing to give your soul. Kaelin's heart pounded, but he did not falter. If that is the price to protect her, then so be it. The figure's shadowed face tilted, as though smiling. Then your path is set. Darkness gathers, and only those who burn willingly may walk with the stars. With that, it vanished, leaving Kaelin trembling, not with fear, but with determination. Unseen, Umbral's laughter curled through the void. Yes, mortal, bind yourself tighter to her. The deeper the love, the sweeter the shattering. And thus the threads tightened, Liara torn between love and duty, Kaelin stepping onto a path that would test his very soul, and Umbral weaving shadows into a trap both radiant and deadly. The Court of Stars was not a place of comfort, but of judgment. Its halls, woven from constellations, shimmered with cold brilliance. Liara felt both at home and estranged there, welcomed as their princess, yet scrutinized as though her heart had already betrayed them. Elarion's words still weighed heavily upon her. Sever what binds you. She could not banish them, no matter how she tried. To prove herself, Liara was summoned to the Trials of Radiance, a rite not undertaken since before the dawn of humanity. These trials, crafted by the stars themselves, tested not power but essence. The first trial demanded that she walk through the Mirror Nebula, where every star reflected her own face back at her. For hours, she wandered through endless visions of herself, warrior, queen, child, shadow. Each reflection asked the same question. Who are you? A guardian of stars? Or a girl who dreams of love? Liara answered not with words, but with silence, pressing forward though her heart twisted with uncertainty. The nebula released her, though she emerged shaken. The second trial led her into the hollow constellation, a place where stars had died and their light no longer reached. There she faced emptiness itself. The void whispered to her, Umbral's voice hidden within its echoes, "See how easily light fades. What you fight for will crumble, as mortals do, as love does. Why resist?" But Liara stood firm. "Even if light fades, it is worth shining," she declared. "And even if love breaks, it is worth holding." Her words lit a spark within the hollow constellation, and one forgotten star flared to life once more. She left the trial weary, but with her spirit unbroken. Meanwhile, on Earth, Kaelin was undergoing trials of his own. The kingdom of Arvlith had not known peace since the Dreadborn attack. Rumors spread of shadowy creatures lurking in forests, of nightmares that followed men into waking hours. Though the villagers looked to Kaelin as a leader, he knew he could not protect them alone. He sought training beyond what any soldier had known, delving into forgotten texts, speaking with wandering sages, even traveling to a ruined temple where it was said the ancients once touched the stars themselves. It was there that Kaelin discovered an ancient weapon, half buried in the dust of centuries, a blade forged not of steel but of crystallized starlight. Its glow was faint, nearly extinguished, yet when Kaelin grasped the hilt, it blazed anew. The sages told him it was a relic from the time when mortals and stars fought side by side against the void. But beware, they warned. Such a blade binds the wielder's soul. Once drawn, it cannot be set aside. You will no longer fight only as a man, but as a vessel of the light itself. Kaelin thought of Liara, of her fragile glow after the battle, of her sorrowful eyes as she ascended. He tightened his grip on the blade. "Then let my soul be bound." When Liara returned from her trials, her glow was steadier, though still shadowed by doubt. Selirya embraced her with warmth, but Elarion remained stern. "You have endured, daughter," he said, "but Umbral is cunning. He does not seek only your fall, he seeks dominion over every flame in the cosmos. You cannot allow your mortal heart to weaken you further." Liara raised her head. "Father, you mistake me. My heart does not weaken me. It strengthens me. It is love that carried me through the hollow constellation, love that reignited a star long dead. Perhaps that is what Umbral fears most." Her words rippled through the court, leaving silence in their wake. Elarion frowned, but Selirya's lips curved in a faint smile. Yet Liara knew her trials were far from over. The final test was not of will, but of sacrifice. She would be called to choose between the eternal stars and the fragile world she had come to love. The choice would not be symbolic, it would be binding, shaping her destiny forever. As she prepared, she felt a tug deep within her essence, a bond pulling her gaze downward to the mortal world. She closed her eyes and saw Kaelin, his hand wrapped around a glowing blade, training in the ruins of the temple. She felt his resolve, his determination to stand at her side no matter the cost. Her heart ached with both pride and fear. He was stepping into dangers he could not fully understand, yet his love burned as fiercely as her own. Far beyond, Umbral watched with a patience colder than eternity. His Dreadborn stirred at his command, and new horrors brewed in the silence of collapsed suns. "Let her love grow," he whispered. "Let the mortal bind himself tighter. When the final trial comes, her heart will tear itself apart. And in that moment, her light will be mine." The stage was set. Liara, fortified by her trials yet torn by her heart, Kaelin, bound to the blade of starlight, and Umbral, weaving shadows into a snare that spanned both heaven and earth. The war between light and darkness was no longer distant. It was closing in, and soon, neither stars nor mortals would remain untouched. The stars shimmered anxiously above Arvlith, their light uneasy, as though they sensed the storm that was coming. The kingdom had grown restless since Liara's departure. Though the people still whispered about the silver maiden who had saved them, their gratitude was laced with fear. If such creatures of shadow had come once, would they not return? And if they did, what would become of them without their strange, celestial guardian? Kalen felt that fear pressing down on him every day, yet it did not break him. With the starlight blade in his grasp, he trained ceaselessly, his body growing lean and strong, his spirit hardened by purpose. The weapon felt alive in his hands, as though it pulsed in time with his heartbeat, as though Liara's very essence guided him. Still, he knew that mortal strength alone would never be enough. He needed her.
And she came.
On the eve of a blood-red moon, when shadows stretched long across the land, Liara descended once more. She did not walk this time. She fell like a comet, her silver glow streaking across the sky until she landed in a quiet grove at the edge of the kingdom. Kalen, who had felt her presence tugging at his soul, was already waiting. For a long moment, they simply looked at one another, the silence heavy with all the words unspoken since her departure. Then Kalen stepped forward, his hand trembling only slightly as he reached for her. "You came back. I told you I would," she said softly, though her voice carried both relief and sorrow. Her glow was steadier now, tempered by her trials, yet her eyes shimmered with vulnerability. Kalen showed her the blade. "I found this. They said it was forged from starlight, meant for those who would fight beside your kind. If I must give my soul to stand with you, then I will." Liara's breath caught. She touched the blade, and it sang, a pure, silver note that resonated in her very being. "This is not a gift lightly taken, Kalen. Once bound, it cannot be undone." "Then let it be so," he replied. "I would rather burn with you for a moment than live an eternity without you." Her heart trembled at his words. Love, she realized, was not only her strength but his as well. And yet, in the shadows beyond the grove, Umbral's whisper coiled like smoke. "Burn, little star. Burn together. The brighter the flame, the sweeter the ashes." That very night, the first great strike fell. It began with silence. Birds ceased their songs, the wind stilled, even the rivers seemed to hold their breath. Then the horizon darkened, not with clouds, but with a wall of shadow rising higher and higher until it blotted out the stars. The Dreadborn returned, but they were no longer scattered phantoms. They marched in legions, their voidborn forms shifting and writhing, carrying with them an aura of despair so heavy that men dropped their weapons before battle was even joined. Panic swept the kingdom. Bells tolled, soldiers rallied, villagers fled to the citadel's walls. Kalen stood at the forefront, the starlight blade glowing in his hands, his heart hammering as he stared at the endless tide of shadow. Beside him stood Liara, her glow radiant yet strained. She could feel Umbral's presence woven into the advancing darkness, his will pressing against her own like ice against flame. "Stay close," she told Kalen, her voice trembling with both command and plea. "I will never leave your side," he answered. The battle erupted like thunder. Liara's light cut through the shadow ranks, scattering them in bursts of silver fire. Kalen fought with a fury he had never known, the blade striking true where mortal steel would have failed, each blow sending ripples of light through the writhing forms. Together, they moved as one, star and mortal, flame and steel, love and duty intertwined. But the shadows were endless. For every Dreadborn that fell, two more rose. The ground shook with their advance, and the sky dimmed until only Liara's glow and Kalen's blade held back the dark. The kingdom's soldiers faltered, their courage swallowed by despair. Liara felt her essence straining, each burst of light tearing at her soul. Umbral's laughter echoed within her mind, cruel and cold. "See, little star? See how fragile your strength becomes when you cling to love. You cannot save them all. Soon you will lose him. And when you do, your light will be mine." Her heart wavered, but then she felt Kalen's hand brush hers briefly amid the chaos, anchoring her. She looked into his eyes, mortal, fragile, but unyielding, and found the strength to rise again. With a cry that split the heavens, Liara unleashed a wave of starlight so vast that the night turned to day. The front lines of the Shadow Army disintegrated, their forms shrieking as they burned away. Kaelin, shielded by her radiance, pressed forward, striking at the remaining creatures with renewed fury. The tide turned, and for a moment, hope rekindled. Yet deep within the void, Umbral stirred. His shadow loomed over the battlefield, vast and formless, blotting out the stars entirely. His voice rolled across the land like a storm. You delay the inevitable, princess. But every flicker brings you closer to your end. When your mortal heart falters, you will fall, and all light will follow. The people trembled at the sound, their hope wavering once more. Liara, her body trembling with exhaustion, looked to Kaelin. He stood firm, his blade alight, his gaze unshaken. We will not fall, he said, loud enough for friend and foe alike. Not while we stand together. And in that moment, Liara believed him. The battle at the Citadel's edge was only the beginning. Though Liara's brilliance had pushed back the first wave of Umbral's forces, the shadow did not retreat. It coiled, regrouped, and spread like an infection across the land. Forests wilted, rivers turned black, and the skies above remained veiled in unnatural gloom. Hope flickered, fragile and unsteady, and many whispered that the kingdom would not last another season. Yet where despair grew, so too did the legend of the Starlight Princess. Bards sang of the Silver Maiden and the mortal knight who fought by her side. Villagers lit lanterns of starlight, tiny imitations of her glow, placing them in their windows to defy the dark. Children who once trembled at night now whispered her name like a prayer. She had become more than a protector. She was a symbol of defiance, a flame refusing to die. But Liara herself felt that flame waning. Every battle drained her more deeply than the last. The light she summoned did not replenish as quickly, and the toll of fighting the Dreadborn was written in the trembling of her hands, the faint dimming of her glow. She did not speak of it, not to Kaelin, not to anyone. Yet she knew. The cost of remaining in the mortal realm, bound by love and duty, was consuming her essence faster than the stars above could restore it. Kaelin, however, noticed the change. He saw it in her weary gaze after each clash, in the way her shoulders slumped when no one was watching. He longed to tell her to rest, to save herself, but he knew she would not listen. Liara fought not only for the kingdom but for him, for the bond that had tethered their souls together beneath the stars. And he, in turn, could no more abandon her than he could stop his own heart. One evening, after weeks of unending battle, they found a moment of quiet amid the ruins of a once thriving village. The air was heavy with ash, but the sky above cleared just enough for a few stars to pierce through. Liara sat upon a broken wall, her glow faint but steady, her eyes lifted toward those distant lights. Kaelin stood nearby, his blade laid across his knees, watching her in silence until he finally spoke. "You're fading," he said quietly, his voice roughened not by accusation but by sorrow. She turned to him, her lips curving into a small, tired smile. "I was never meant to stay here, Kaelin. Every breath I take in your world is borrowed. Every step, every heartbeat, every moment with you. It is a gift the stars were never meant to allow." "Then let the stars rage," he said fiercely, moving closer, his hand finding hers. "If their gift ends, I'll fight heaven itself to give you more." Her smile deepened, tinged with sadness. "And if the cost is your soul? If Umbral strikes you down because of me? Then I'll meet him with your light in my heart," Kaelin replied, his gaze unwavering. "Liara, I would rather die at your side than live 1,000 years in a world without you." His words broke her defenses. Tears welled in her luminous eyes, shimmering like liquid starlight. She pressed her forehead against his, her glow mingling with his warmth. "Then let us burn together, Kaelin, for as long as the flame will last." For a brief moment, the darkness seemed far away, but Umbral's shadow never slept. That very night, his forces struck again, not at the walls of Arvlith, but deep within the heart of the land. Villages were swallowed, farmlands turned to wasteland, and the skies wept black rain. It became clear that the Dreadborn were no longer fighting for territory. They were driving Liara toward desperation, forcing her to spread her light thinner and thinner until she would be spent. Umbral wanted her broken, exhausted, and easy to claim. The king of Arvlith called a council. Nobles, generals, priests, and Liara herself gathered in the shattered hall of the citadel. Maps lay sprawled across the table, ink stains marking where towns had once stood. The air was thick with fear, voices rising in anger and despair. "We cannot hold much longer," one general declared. "The people starve. Our armies dwindle. Even with the princess's power, we are but children striking at shadows." "Then we strike at their master," Kalen said, his voice steady despite the murmurs of disbelief. "Umbral hides in the void, pulling the strings of his horde. If we cut him down, the rest will fall." "A fool's dream," muttered a noble. "No mortal can walk the void and return." "Then it is good I am not mortal alone," Kalen replied, glancing at Liara. "Not anymore." All eyes turned to her. She felt the weight of their hope, their desperation, and Kalen's fierce devotion pressing upon her. The path ahead was clear, though it chilled her heart. To strike at Umbral directly meant leaving the mortal realm, stepping into the darkness where even starlight could be smothered. Few had ever dared it. None had returned. Yet she met Kalen's gaze and nodded. "If Umbral is not defeated, all else will crumble. We must go to him. Together." Silence followed, heavy and final. The council knew it was not a plan. It was a last prayer. But with no other hope, they clung to it. That night, as preparations began, Liara and Kalen stood beneath the open sky one last time. The stars shone faintly through the veil of umbral shadow, as though straining to watch them. Liara lifted her hand, weaving their light into a path that shimmered faintly across the horizon. "This is the Star Road," she whispered. "It will lead us into the void. Once we step upon it, there is no turning back." Kalen tightened his grip on the starlight blade. "Then forward, my princess. Always forward." And together, hand in hand, they stepped into the darkness, toward Umbral, toward destiny, toward an ending written in starlight. The star road shimmered like a ribbon of silver fire, winding upward through the void of night. With every step, the world of Arvlith fell further away, until the forests, rivers, and citadels became no more than faint shadows below. Around them stretched an ocean of blackness, infinite and cold, pierced only by the faint gleam of distant stars. Kalen walked with steady resolve, his grip on the starlight blade firm, though his heart pounded with both awe and dread. Liara moved beside him, her glow softer now but more resolute than ever, as though she had gathered the last remnants of her essence for this final path. She glanced at him often, drawing courage not from the heavens, but from the mortal who had chosen to burn with her. At the end of the star road, the void opened before them, a rift vast and terrible, where light itself seemed to die. From within it came a voice, low and cruel, rolling like thunder across eternity. "Welcome, little star. Welcome, mortal flame. Come, let me show you how fragile your fire truly is." Umbral emerged. He was not merely shadow. He was absence itself, a form vast and shifting, with eyes like burning voids and tendrils of darkness that writhed endlessly. The sight of him sent cold terror through Kalen's veins, yet the starlight blade in his hand blazed brighter, defying the despair. Liara stepped forward, her silver glow clashing against Umbral's darkness, and for the first time in centuries, the void trembled with the clash of light and shadow. The battle began. Liara's radiance struck like lightning, each burst tearing into Umbral's form and scattering fragments of darkness that dissolved into nothing. Kalen moved with her, his blade an extension of her light, cutting through the Dreadborn that spilled from their master's essence. Together they fought with a unity born not of training but of love, two halves of a single flame burning against the eternal night. But Umbral was vast. Every wound they inflicted closed, every fragment of shadow reformed. His laughter filled the void, chilling and endless. You cannot destroy me, child. I am the silence between stars, the darkness that swallows all. You burn, yes, but even the brightest star must one day die. Liara faltered, her glow flickering under the weight of his words and the drain of her essence. Kalen caught her, holding her steady, his own strength fraying but unbroken. Look at me, Liara, he urged. Not at him. At me. We fight because we love, and that is stronger than his emptiness. Her eyes met his, and something within her steadied. For a moment, she shone brighter than she had since first descending to the mortal realm. With renewed fury, she cast her light against Umbral, but deep down, she knew the truth. This battle could not be won by strength alone. There was only one way. The stars had whispered it to her long before, an ancient truth she had tried to deny. To destroy Umbral, she would have to give up her own essence entirely, releasing all her light in one final blaze. It would banish him, but it would also unmake her. And Kalen would be left behind, his heart broken, his soul scarred. Tears filled her eyes as the choice pressed down upon her. She could not bear to leave him, yet she could not bear to let his world fall. Kalen seemed to sense it. He cupped her face in his hand, even as the void trembled around them. I know what you're thinking, he said softly, and I won't let you do it alone. She shook her head, despair breaking in her voice. If you give yourself, you'll be lost. Kalen, you're mortal. Your soul wasn't made for this. Then let it be remade, he whispered fiercely. What is a soul but love and memory? If mine can burn with yours, even for a moment, then I will not be lost. I will be with you, always. Her tears spilled, luminous and sorrowful. Then together, she whispered. And together they let go. Kalen drove the starlight blade deep into Umbral's core as Liara unleashed the totality of her essence, pouring every fragment of her being into the strike. Light erupted, not gentle, not soft, but fierce and all-consuming. It tore through the darkness like dawn breaking an endless night. Umbral screamed, his vast form unraveling as the blaze devoured him, scattering his shadow into nothing. The void shook, shuddered, and then collapsed inward, swallowing his essence forever. When the light faded, there was silence. Where Umbral had stood, there was nothing but starlight drifting like falling snow. And where Liara and Kalen had been, there was no longer flesh, no longer mortal or celestial forms. Instead, two brilliant stars shone side by side in the sky above Arvlith, new constellations, their light intertwined, burning eternally together. The people looked up and wept, some for sorrow, for the loss of the princess who had saved them, but more for wonder, for the promise that her light had not vanished, only changed. From that day forward, those twin stars became a symbol of love unyielding, of sacrifice and hope. Lovers whispered their vows beneath them, soldiers swore their oaths in their glow, and children pointed to them when they feared the night. The kingdom of Arvlith healed. The forests bloomed again, rivers sparkled with life, and the shadow never returned. For though Umbral was gone, the memory of him remained, a warning written in the night sky, and a reminder that love, even mortal and fleeting, could burn brighter than eternity. And so the story of the Starlight Princess and her mortal knight passed into legend. A tale of sacrifice and devotion, of light against shadow, of two souls who refused to bow to fate. Above the world, their stars burned on, forever side by side, forever together.